Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here being Satin Hill Farm. I'm visiting Josh for the first time, and I thought I would give you a tour of his farm, my first impressions being here for the first time. So yeah, let's do it.
Hey Jesse, have you seen my camera, man?
First things first, if you're not subscribed to Josh's channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you are subscribed, you're awesome. All right, first, I'm gonna show you this tunnel, so let's do that.
What are you doing, Jesse?
Is this not how you do your slow-mo?
All right, Jesse, super excited for you to be here. I know you haven't been here yet, and I've been to your place a few times, so yeah. I guess, first of all, before we get into your first impressions here on the farm, do you want to tell everyone, if they don't know who you are, what you do, and those sort of things?
Yeah, so that would probably be helpful. So I run the No-Till Growers YouTube channel. I host the No-Till Market Garden podcast. I go by Farmer Jesse, as ridiculous as that is. Yeah, and I'm excited to be here, Josh, and I'm glad we're starting in here, because I love this. You have a, what is it, 24 by 16?
Mm-hmm.
24 by 16 tunnel, and this is like a greenhouse propagation tunnel. And I've always started we've started several different properties, and we've always started on really small greenhouses. So I have somewhat of an affection for them, but I also know how productive a small space like this can be. I think the impulse is a lot of times to get a really large prop house to start with. You don't need that. You could probably, out of a 24 by 16, do an acre of starts. It would be tough. It would definitely be full in the spring, depending on how many transplants you're doing. But this is like plenty of space, and you've obviously been able to utilize it for your tunnels. But you have like your workbench in here for doing starts and all of those things. Like, it's a nice warm space to be in the winter or in the spring when you're doing those sorts of things. And like, I just love the louvers. I love the fans. Like, I like this space with the double poly. Like, this is a really nice space. These overhead waterers, like, this is really well set up. This is one of the first things I wanted to talk about, just because I think oftentimes when people are starting farms, they just look at these, you want this big propagation space, but I don't think it's always necessary. And in fact, it doesn't have to be necessarily this fancy either. This past year on our new farm, we started in a cat tunnel for a prop house with water barrels. And that was plenty, and we're going to slowly move up to something like this next year. But this amount of space, there's so much room in here.
Yeah, this is a luxury for sure.
Yeah.
I've said that before, and this is way bigger than I need. But I also think there's a lot of people that start farms that don't have a nursery space, that, like you bootstrapped your nursery for years, and it was too small and didn't have as many luxuries in them. I've really been appreciative of this space. It makes my life just so much easier.
Yeah, I can imagine. And also you can fit, so, you have a little bit of extra space for your scale to be able to fit, your trays and your workbench and all of that stuff in here as well, which often you can't do on a small scale. But yeah, I mean, they can be bootstrapped, but if you have a little bit of money to put into it, some capital, I think it's really worth it. I mean, this shows me it's really worth it too. So yeah, it's well done.
Thanks, dude.
I wanted to talk about this space because, like, one of the things that I noticed, the first thing I noticed is just how nice this walking, sort of clear, non-weedy, non-muddy space is to have on your farm. And this is something we've started doing on our farm, is mulching pathways, because our farm is very wet and it's very muddy. So we've started mulching pathways, but just having this space opens up so many opportunities for efficiency, to be able to get in and out of your tunnels or get in and out of. So I can see why Josh spent so much time putting the mulch down and making sure this was nice and clear. I love these compost bins too. This is like a really cool system, especially on the scale where you're able to have either different kinds of compost going or one, continuous flow like he has. This is super cool. I think that this space in general, just having nice, clean, mulched space like this has got a lot of value, even though it doesn't bring a technical value to the farm. One thing I really like, one of my biggest first impressions is just like, this is nestled in the woods, like this farm is. He's got, trees literally surrounding, and I've watched a lot of Josh's videos. I knew that, but actually being here and seeing it is different. And it makes me wonder about the efficacy of having these so close together. So it'll be interesting to see as Josh updates over the winter how well these work, having 3 tunnels kind of up close with, you know, you can see a little shadow right there on the tunnel, like how much light these first beds get, how much light you lose that way, or it may be really effective because the way they, south being that way, they're just maybe getting enough afternoon sun to get every bed gets enough sunlight for what they need. And also these are deciduous trees, so they're losing their leaves, so he'll get some sunlight gain as the winter goes on. But yeah, that's definitely something that stood out to me, is how close these tunnels are, and then it being like really nestled in the woods like this. So I want to talk about the irrigation, because I have not used this timer. We use the Galcon 6 zone timer, but I love the irrigation generally on this farm. He uses the Farmer's Friend overheads and has a lot of drip down, but the beauty is that it's buried. Like, you don't see a lot of lines. I rarely go to a farm that and even including our farm, that the lines aren't out, that you're tripping over them, walking over them, having to like do the weed management over top of them. Like, I think, you know, this is why, like, it looks so nice, or that's why, that's a problem. This looks so nice, having it below ground, having it buried so that you're not tripping over it. And the weed management over top of lines can become a problem even if you're using plastic, because they'll get moved around, they'll get too hot is another thing that happens, especially in the middle of the summer. So this is really cool. I love this sort of, you know, clean, keeping it out of the way irrigation setup. That's really neat. One thing that I really like about this farm is like just these little bit of details. Like, this structure here is excellent for, you know, a lot of times these sorts of things, your carts, your wheelbarrows, they get a lot of weathering if you leave them out. You know, you leave them in the sun, they get hit, you know, fill with rain, they get rusty, all of those things. Like, this is a really just super effective and very simple way to keep them out of, you know, too much weathering, while at the same time being really close to the rest of the operation, because we're right next to the tunnels as I talk right now. And then same with the tools. You have this nice, like, simple tool rack with this poly on the top, and that's so simple. Keeps it out of the rain, keeps it out of the weathering, keeps it out of the sun. That's excellent. And I also like these coated gritters. That's really smart, because the gritter rusts really, really fast. So having that coat on there, I'm sure that Josh has probably talked about that at some point, but that's really nice. One thing that Josh has probably mentioned many times, I know he has on his channel, is that this is a slope. Like, all of these tunnels are on a pretty good slope. I think it's probably an 18-inch drop from the top to the bottom. And it's interesting, like, one, we talked about this earlier today, but if he maybe leveled these tunnels a little better, his irrigation would maybe be over the center, which I don't know if that makes a big difference in overhead watering, but it is something to think about. If you're on a slope and you're putting up these cat tunnels, they're really nice for slopes because they don't require the same levelness that a big tunnel, like a big greenhouse would require. But but if you did have it level, those sprinklers would probably be right over top, which may be nice, but it may not be a big deal. But it is also interesting that when you're looking at these beds, like when you're actually in these tunnels, there's like a natural terracing that goes on, probably from walking over them and raking them and tiltering or whatever, that keeps them actually like they start to stair step, which is kind of a cool look. And it also is probably, you know, a natural effect of just farming on a slope like this. And yeah, and this is sort of what I'm talking about, where you have like a flat bed of beets here, then you have it kind of stair step down to the pathway, and then stair step down to the lettuce bed down here, and it kind of has like this sort of natural sort of leveling effect. I am curious though, being on a slope like this with this specific setup, how often, Josh, do you ever have to like lift your wood chips out of the bed? Or
yeah, pretty much every time I flip a bed, I run the string line and I just rake the wood chips back into the walkway.
I remember Small Axe Farm said that they farm on a slope in Vermont, and they often have to just essentially send the soil back up the hill every season, or maybe even every bed flip, is that sort of just naturally wants to come downhill.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one thing that's helpful is being in a tunnel so I don't get the effect with rain.
It's
rain
mostly
would make
from
a
walking.
big deal.
And I'm sure with the leveled beds, it actually does a better job of absorbing the water and keeping it here so that you're not having uneven watering effects. So one disclaimer here is I told Josh I get to film wherever I want to, and also that he couldn't clean up before I shot. But this section is probably not one you see a lot. It's just kind of this like drained area. It's really wet down here. But one of the interesting things about this, and Josh and I have talked a lot about drainage because I've had a lot of drainage issues on my farm, was that it's clearly designed for all the water to flow sort of to this central area and out of the property. which I feel like is definitely essential, not only farming on a slope, but farming on clay, farming in a wet area. Like we're both in very wet areas. I think our farm has received over 60 inches of rain this year in Kentucky, and drainage has been an enormous issue. And Josh has been coaching me a lot on like how he set up his drainage, because it's been really tough for us to figure out like how to navigate get the water out of the beds. I know that a lot of areas struggle with getting enough water or keeping the water, and that's not the way here in the subtropics or semi-subtropics, where you get so much rainfall, it really is going to damage your crops if you can't figure out a way to move it. So yeah, this is cool. I like how it's very clear where the water ends up and where it's supposed to go. Yeah, and I think that's a really nice setup.
So we're in the third tunnel here, which is under construction, and it was really interesting because obviously, like having you here, and like when you see a farm in person, it's always different than when you see it online or you talk to your friends or whatever. But it's really cool that I did agree to like let you show whatever you wanted here, and yeah. So overall, like, how are you feeling about this, and like, what do you take away?
Yeah, I think this is. I mean, it's interesting because yeah, you're right. Like a lot of what people see online is often curated and those sorts of things. It doesn't really feel that way. I mean, there's like a tarp over here that is probably you wouldn't normally show, but like generally speaking, I've seen all of these things. Like it doesn't. It's very clean. It's very productive. I love like how straight everything's in good, straight, evenly spaced rows. I love it. I mean, I think it's a really great model for a farm that has maybe you have like 2 acre, but it's not a full 2 acres open, but you have a fairly sizable backyard and a pretty good productive farm in it. And I think it's a cool model. I really like it a lot. And it's exactly what I expected it to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a big takeaway that, I think what you've seen is kind of what you're experiencing now. And I think that's always interesting because, I don't know, I've gone places and like you see pictures and then you show up and you're like, yeah. Or when you meet people, you're like, oh, what's Farmer Jesse really like? You know?
Oh, yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
He is a pretty amazing dude. He knows a lot. So go check out No Till Growers channel, the podcast, all the cool stuff. What's coming up with No Till Growers right now, Jesse?
Well, we're doing, we just started the No Till Market Garden podcast 4th season. We've got some videos coming up from various farms that I'm on like a book tour essentially for my book, The Living Soil Handbook. So a book tour in the farming world is a conference tour. So I'm going to a few places. I'll see a few
No big
farms.
deal, just going on a book tour.
Just no big deal. I'll be in England, which is cool, here in January. So there will be a lot of cool footage from various farms as I travel through. I was just at Jenny Love's and I was just at Evan Chender's culinary gardener. So there will be videos coming up there from different no-till and cool farms. So yeah, that's kind of it. Check out the channel and thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, Jesse, thanks for taking over today and showing all the little bits. Maybe
I get to take the camera with me though, right?
No, you definitely have to take your own camera home.
Okay, but we have to B-roll the tarp.
All right, we'll B-roll the tarp.
Okay,
all right.
Great. Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here. Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here at Satin Hill Farm. I'm taking over Josh's channel for the day. I'm going to give you a tour of his farm and give you my first impressions having been here for the first time. And yeah, it's going to be cool.
You want to do the this video if you don't do the whole thing?
I usually do that after the intro. I'm like,
oh, after the intro.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, sorry. I thought you were going to do all that right now.
I'm starting from the top, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here. Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here. Here is being here for the first time. So I'm always thinking of stupid things. Have me run and jump and land on your pile of leaves. You'd be like under all these bags. So just start out like, this has been really cool, Jesse. You're like such a master and really incredible guy. And I like, yeah, let's go. Just go. Just as many compliments as possible.